When we talk about heart failure, we have to understand that it's an iceberg phenomenon, right? So very few patients of heart failure are effectively diagnosed as heart failure. Very few of that subset of population is receiving goal directed medical therapy. We shall be talking about it. And very few of these patients have proper compliance, adherence to therapy and regular follow-ups. In spite of all these, there is still a lot amount of patients coming for repeated hospitalizations, which later in the long years adds to their cumulative morbidity and mortality. Heart failure has and will always remain the biggest pandemic and endemic in India. Why? Because India has a huge set of geriatric population. A huge set is diabetic, hypertensive and suffering from other metabolic syndromes. So to combat this bigger challenge, it's a huge responsibility on us clinicians, physicians and cardiologists to appropriate, diagnose these patients and guide them in the later course of therapy. When we talk about causes of heart failure, we are all aware coronary artery disease tops the chart. Apart from these, other comorbid conditions like diabetes, hypertension, alcoholic dilated cardiomyopathies, anemic heart failure, very rarely pericardial diseases, toxin-induced, Takotsubo cardiomyopathy are seen on and off. But from our point of view, it is very, very important that we as clinicians should effectively prioritize the patients to go for an echocardiography, because this golden standard tool will help to evaluate any valvular parameters, any hypertrophic cardiomyopathy which has been the root cause of hypertension in the long run. And when you get the root cause, you can effectively treat the patients in a better way. So this cartoon once again shows what exactly is the pathophysiology going inside our geriatric heart failure patients. On one side, we have a high afterload going inside the body because of significant RAS activity. As our previous speaker elucidly depicted how renin-angiotensin system, increased sympathetic activity, all effectively helps, plays a critical role in diabetic kidney disease. Similarly, all this also has a very bad cardiac remodeling effect on the heart. On the other side, we have an increased preload, which is leading to pulmonary venous congestion and ultimately long-term cardiac hypertrophy and dilatation, leading to cardiac failure. So what can we do to prevent this, and what can we do to solve this? Heart failure as such is not only a singular consultant responsibility, it's a comprehensive approach. We, along with our team of radiologists, along with our team of cardiologists, as well as dietary physicians, all have to play a cumulative role. So it is a good amount of pharmacotherapy, there is a good amount of proper high intensive imaging in the form of cardiac MRIs, dobutamine stress echo, and latest trends that we have is the implantable devices. So what do you do when you see a heart failure patient in your OPD? Well, you get a dyspneic patient, you basically take their clinical history, you evaluate their family history, you auscultate them, you find bilateral crepitations, find pedal edema, you get a NT-proBNP level. Well, it comes high. So possibly that is a suspicious that this patient is suffering from cardiac issues. Now your EKG might not be a very conclusive parameter. It will have vague findings from ST segment changes, low voltage. But the golden standard that we as family physicians and as consultant cardiologists should prioritize is a echocardiography. The 2D echo will basically properly evaluate the LV systolic dysfunction, the diastolic dysfunction, other valvular parameters, are we looking at any anatomical or structural abnormalities, and so on and so forth. So when we talk about heart failure, oftenly we try to label the patient as a heart failure with a poor ejection fraction. So this EF is a very important parameter when we can understand what the patient is suffering from and what further our treatment algorithm has to be. But what is often underlooked on our part is something that we call as diastolic dysfunction. Now this diastolic dysfunction in the long run will basically lead to impaired LV filling, impaired left ventricular relaxation, and ultimately lead to hypertrophy and dilatation. So even a grade 1 or a grade 2 has to be effectively followed up. And if that ultimately develops into grade 3, grade 4, then effective management and therapy has also to be accounted for. Yeah, so when we were children, we used to often show our report cards to our parent and be very apprehensive about it. Echocardiography is similarly a report card of our geriatric heart failure patients. So when a score of 45 is basically flashed on the reports, we are very apprehensive that this patient in the long run is going to suffer severe morbidity and mortality. So what is our role as a clinician? We have to put them on appropriate therapy. So as we talked about a holistic approach, what is the appropriate therapy? Well, it starts right from your therapy goals. You have to effectively treat their diabetes, their hypertension, advice on cessation of smoking, alcohol intake, and basically try to control their metabolic parameters from related to obesity, thyroid, etc. We have a lot of medicines in our basket. We since the last 30 years, we have played with beta blockers, MRAs, ACE inhibitors, ARBs, possibly a low touch of digitalis, centrally acting vasodilators like hydralazine nitrates. But in spite of all this, we see that these patients do remain symptomatic. They are still not effectively clear of all their issues, and we have to know what else we can offer them. So it's simple. Treating heart failure is not very complicated. Getting their diagnosis right, getting a echocardiography, getting their NT-proBNP values, and then the pharmacotherapy. You have to go with the guidelines. So two major guidelines have been presented by the American College of Cardiology and ESC. Let's see what they are. Talking about heart failure burden, we just talked about, and how you choose the right treatment for HFrEF. Our topic for today will be limited to heart failure with reduced ejection fraction. Lack of goal-directed medical therapy. Now, we as physicians oftenly face a lot of inertia, possibly in initiating the right dose of medication, possibly in up-titrating the medications as and when required. Possibly there is a loss of communication, the patients do not regularly follow up, there is a loss of adherence, and multiple reasons because of which only 25% of HFrEF patients are receiving goal-directed medical therapy. And that is the reason why a huge subset of patients is still getting recurrently readmitted to the hospital for heart failure. So this graph effectively depicts how effective GDMT in the long run will basically lead to a low morbidity and mortality in the cumulative years. Since the last 30 years, we have been giving these patients multiple therapies. Multiple trials have been conducted to know what's new in heart failure, but it is the latest paradigm trial which was conducted in 2014, wherein a subset of population was put on ARNIs, the golden drug of today, angiotensin receptor neprilysin inhibitors along with a beta blocker and MRA. Another subset was given your conventional ACE inhibitor, enalapril plus a beta blocker and a MRA. And we have observed that a fantastic population of patients given this beautiful combination over the last 5 years have a significant improvement in their 5-year survival rate, as well as a significant decrease in morbidity and morbidity as compared to the conventional regimen. So the American College of Cardiology recommends that goal-directed medical therapy has to be the foundation of heart failure care. We as clinicians, right from family physicians, should be aware of this, because you are the first screening tool for the patients, and when patients go bad, then basically there is a call for reference to higher institute. So how do you manage such patients? Okay, so the ACC 2022 guidelines have recommended that when the first time the patient consults you, he is basically in the stage 1, wherein his dyspneic, probably in NYHA class 1 and 2, you try to get an X-ray done, you get an NT-proBNP value, it is high, you get an echocardiography done, the patient's ejection fraction is say somewhere around 40 to 45%. So your first and foremost symptomatic guide of management is basically to decongest the patient. You put them on diuresis, along with that you put them on beta blockers, MRAs, ACE ARBs. Now another beautiful molecule that we have now in a basket is the SGLT2 inhibitor. EMPA and dapagliflozin are a wonderful molecule as far as heart failure is concerned, irrespective of the glycemic status of the patient. Now in spite of this therapy, the patient comes back to you, you again get an echocardiography done, the patient is still dyspneic, possibly the patient has now gone into NYHA class 3 breathlessness. EF is less than 40%, probably for few patients EF might have slightly improved to 45%, but dyspnea is still continuing. At this point of time, you initiate goal-directed medical therapy. You continue to counsel the patient that this therapy is going to be beneficial in the long run, and you try to get regular follow-ups. In spite of this therapy, the patient is still worsening. EF is probably dropping down below 40%. Now the ECG findings are suggestive of wide QRS complexes, left bundle branch block. So this patient is a patient who is basically going to be required advanced therapy either in the form of ICD, CRT. These are all costly in our currently Indian economic scenario, but as consultants it is our responsibility to advise them. Maybe a low touch of digitalis, hydrolysin nitrate might help them. In spite of all this advanced treatment, the patient is still dyspneic. So that subset of patient is something that we call as refractory heart failure. Now at this point of time, there is very little that you can do. You have to try to counsel the patient that they might have to live with some element of heart failure. Probably you can still counsel them for cardiac transplant or LVADs if they are affording. During this therapy, during this follow-up, they have to be effectively continued on their goal-directed medical therapy so as to avoid a high morbidity and mortality in the coming years. So we go with the guidelines. Now we shall be talking about 4 categories of patient. You have your daily OPD patients coming with chronic HFrEF. They are symptomatic, they are breathless, they are probably in failure. You have your hospitalized heart failure with reduced ejection fraction patients who have come with acute decompensated heart failure. You have the third category, that is your de novo newly diagnosed heart failure patients and your HFrEF patients post PCI and CABG. Let us talk about your chronic HFrEF patients which have been coming to you on and off in your OPD. So such patients, such patients, when they come to you in our OPD, they are basically falling into the NYHA class 1 and 2 of dyspnea. These subset of patients have to be initiated on ARNI, irrespective whether if they have been previously taking ACE or ARB, then you should discontinue and put them on ARNI as soon as possible. Certain contraindications and warning that you have to take care into account is basically check their renal functions. Creatinine and potassium is of prime importance. Their blood pressure should be minimum 100 systolic, then they are the perfect candidates for initiating on this molecule. Putting the patient on ARN in the long run will reduce morbidity and mortality. In de novo heart failure patients, when they have not initially been put on ACE or ARB, then putting them directly on ARNI should be the preferred regimen. A low touch of MRA, either spironolactone or eplerenone as per your choice, is also recommended, basically to decongest the patient and prevent any pulmonary edema. In the long run, beta-1 selective beta blockers like metoprolol, carvedilol, bisoprolol should also be added, basically for the oxygen supply and demand mismatch. Together, this therapy will definitely help to reduce the hospitalization and improve the cardiovascular mortality. Even the ESC guidelines recommend that sacubitril valsartan should be replaced in place of ACE or ARB as a first line to reduce the risk of heart failure and death, along with a beta blocker and a low touch of a diuretic. Dapagliflozin, once again, if required, should be definitely put to this algorithm. So in patients with chronic symptoms of HFrEF, patients who have been coming to you in your OPD with all the conventional therapies still not improving, try to replace the older molecules with the newer ones and see how a dramatic response is seen in the coming few weeks to months. Then we have the guidelines which are recommended for hospitalized HFrEF patients. So these patients are basically patients who have been following up with you and now have come with acutely decompensated heart failure directly into the ICU setting. The ideal time for initiating this molecule is during hospitalization and not during discharge. During hospitalization, once again you have to check the BP parameters. If your patient is no longer in cardiogenic shock or any inotropes, then you should replace the ACE-ARB with ARNI as soon as possible. Why it is so? Because timely initiation of this drug in the long term will prevent any LV remodeling and further cardiovascular morbidity and mortality. A smooth effective transition has to be maintained from discharge, from hospitalization to discharge. We shall be talking about it in the current slides. So in a HFrEF patient, initiation of ARNI during hospitalization is of very high economic value. At times we feel that the cost of this drug pinches us, but when you talk about the cost of hospitalization in the long run, definitely it is going to be a way safer economic option. Now, pre-existing goal-directed medical therapy has to be continued in your chronic HFrEF patient who has come to you in an acute decompensated heart failure setting, unless contraindicated in the view of deranged RFTs or a low systolic BP. In patients with HFrEF, if discontinuation of GDMT is necessary in view of these settings, make sure as and when the patient stabilizes, even at the time of discharge, you start this therapy as required in low dosages after clinical stability is achieved. Same ESC guidelines have recommended initiating ARNI as soon as possible in your hospitalized HFrEF patients. Along with this, you should continue your oral medical therapy except for possible dose reduction. Now, that's the beauty of this molecule. Basically, you might require a lower dosage of your digitalis or beta blocker, or you might require to omit your diuretic as well once you initiate ARNI. So, recommended initiation of GDMT pre-discharge and ARNI is recommended as the first line of therapy. Now, guidelines recommended for de novo heart failure with reduced ejection fraction. Yeah, so this is how basically you initiate this molecule. You have got a patient with acute decompensated heart failure in your ICU setting. Now the patient was initially put by some consultant physician or cardiologist on the ACE-ARB. So you stop this drug, you wait for 3 days because that is basically the washout period of ACE and ARB. After 3 days or 36 hours, you initiate ARNI. Now ARNI has to be initiated at a low dose, a 24 by 26 mg combination, that is 50 mg BD. You continue the same dosage for at least 2 to 4 weeks. After 4 weeks, again you reevaluate the patient's vitals, BP is good, creat is normal, potassium is normal, possibly you up titrate to 100 mg BD. Again you safely follow up the patient after 2 to 4 weeks. During this time, if the patient is not having any symptoms of breathlessness or any dizziness or any postural hypotension, then you up titrate to 200 mg BD. And along this therapy, along this transition, you have to continue the oral medical therapy as well. Your de novo heart failure patient is a unique category. Why? Because these are your young subset of patients. These are uniquely not suffering from any pre-existing morbidity, not ACS patients. You know very little about them, and these subset of patients have never been even included in the trials as opposed to your worsening HFrEF patients. Mortality is still the same, and that is why all your de novo heart failure patients has to be treated on priority, because these young patients can go bad in the long run. So both these guidelines recommend of initiating ARNI in the hospital setting. Now your post-PCI and CABG patients, these patients suffer from immediate post-surgical insult. They are at a very high risk of sudden arrhythmias, cardiogenic shock, major adverse cardiovascular effects in the form of stroke, and hence you have to be very careful about mitigating these effects. Effective initiation of ARNI in such patients will prevent death and recurrent hospitalization. You have to continue your oral medical therapy, and GDM2 has to be considered for all complex CAD patients, say left main and arterectomy patients as well. So any patient with a heart failure of less than 35%, irrespective of the coronary anatomy, irrespective of the structural or anatomical defects, whether the patient has been posted for PCI or CABG, continue initiation of ARNI as far as the maximum possible tolerable dose is safely tolerated by the patient. Dosing we have already discussed. So every effort has to be made by us to achieve and maintain the maximum possible tolerable dose unless contraindicated. Every 2 to 4 weeks, guidelines say 1 to 2 weeks, but in our clinical scenario we can safely up titrate every 2 to 4 weeks. Now if the target dose is not well tolerated, the beauty of this molecule is you can stop it at any point of time. Temporary discontinuation of drug can be done without any major side effects. So let's discuss about a case. We have Nazneen, a 53-year-old female, sedentary lifestyle. Well, she was immediately rushed to the hospital for dyspnea. She was complaining of breathlessness since the last few weeks, mild pedal edema, no significant family history, no significant coronary artery disease. All of a sudden, her labs have shown a high NT-proBNP values, EF is low, renal parameters are fine. So basically, she is a case of de novo heart failure patient, a young patient without any pre-existing morbidity and mortality. This subset of patients is something that has to be very effectively diagnosed and treated well, because no coronary abnormality in the long run might predispose them to recurrent attacks of heart failure. A very high incidence of ICU admissions with high mortality and morbidity. So despite an ever increasing prediction of acute heart failure, we have very limited data on de novo heart failure patients. So always choose ARNI in place of a conventional ACE or ARB. These are the guidelines for de novo or ACE-ARB naive heart failure patients. Initiate on ARNI to prevent symptomatic recurrent heart failure admissions. So all these graphs once again are showing how sacubitril valsartan will help the patient to stay out of the hospital, live longer and give a good quality of life, reduce the risk of recurrent hospitalizations, reduce immediate cardiovascular death, and reduces your NT-proBNP values in the long run. No other molecule will help you to achieve this. No ACE or ARB will show a significant decrease your NT-proBNP values probably 6 months down the line, but this molecule will in the long run also help to increase your ejection fraction. There has been a documented evidence of improvement of at least 10 to 12% improvement of EF. So these patients are better protected not only from cardiac parameters but even kidney parameters as well as stroke. It shows an improvement in new onset heart failure. So conclusion is basically we go with the guidelines. We try to initiate this molecule as soon as possible in our patients, taking into account their hemodynamic stability. The main food for thought is basically we want our patients to have minimum drugs. This drug will help to reduce the number of sacs on the wagon. It will replace your conventional ACE or ARB, and in the long run help to give your patients a good quality of life and possibly you a good Google review. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vaishal, for the excellent presentation and updating us with the recent guidelines. So with that, I request our chairpersons, Dr. Preeti Panchal and Dr. Gayatri Gambhir, to felicitate Dr. Vaishal.